Steering goes, steer. Axes go round. But for today, it's done. What are the... It's like the Flintstones over here.
Just start it up!
And that's it, that's it. Oh, come on.
What?
It's the wrong one.
They're different?
It's the one that was my first gen. Not the one I actually wanted.
Oh, the one you want here, you welded on the old one that you just cut off. What What did you just sing?
You're the one that I want.
transmission mount done,
Okay, yep.
and that was it.
Yep.
So talk to me about what we got going on here. I see some cross members.
yeah.
I see the world's shortest drive shaft.
So after we got the transmission cross member done, started working on the front control arm cross member and the rear control arm cross member, which will also be support for the Atlas transfer case. So we got those all in place so that we could start working on suspension links. Yes, this world's smallest drive shaft. Just because of the setup, a one-piece drive shaft wasn't going to quite work for us with the amount of down travel that we're trying to achieve. So putting the two-piece drive shaft in here will allow us to gain that down travel and not have anything bind up. So
yeah, you're essentially changing the pivot point from back here
to up there. Yep.
And the drive shaft potentially interfere with this cross member, this control arm, because the yoke's way up here.
Right.
So now we change the pivot point to back here, away from everything.
Yep.
So that's the idea behind that.
Yep.
And tell me about that kit.
That kit's from Wide Open Design. It is. They offer a 1350 and a 1410 carrier. It's called a carrier bearing kit. Designed specifically for this type of application here.
Yeah, so it comes with like a 10-inch
Yep.
piece.
10-inch piece of tube.
Your yokes, and then there's a bearing in here and a bracket, and you weld the bracket onto something, and then you can bolt the bracket to itself, and then this bracket bolts to this. It's a very intricate kit. I like it a lot.
Yep.
So how do you know how do you know how to do this?
How do I know how to do this? Well,
Because I'm sitting here filming you, watching you do this, and you just started with an open frame, and then you've got control arms going in every which way direction. Explain to me your science behind this.
I mean, honestly, a lot of it comes from trial and error over the years, knowing what works and what doesn't work. And so on this particular setup, what I did was I basically started with a baseline of what I knew should work and then made those modifications to particular frame width and in the area I had to work with. Now, in today's day and age, the internet is an amazing thing, and we are able to have all kinds of calculators and forums and all kinds of cool stuff that help, assist in knowing what to do and where to put it. I personally use a 4-link calculator. That way I can enter all of my numbers for my control arm links, my widths, heights, separations, all that good stuff, and I can, on a computer, see what the suspension is going to do before I put it into real-world application. Now, that calculator is only good for a perfect world. in our situation, we had some space contingencies where I just didn't have room to make it perfect. And so there's a range we're kind of looking for to get those numbers for the suspension to do what we want it to do in all the applications we're going to use it in. And basically, you just have to kind of make it work the best that it can for this particular application. If we were building a complete tube chassis, we could literally design the suspension and then build the chassis around that suspension, and the suspension would be
awesome.
In a perfect world, perfect.
Yeah.
But since we are starting with a LJ frame that's been modified, we only have so much room to work, and so really it's just years of experience, years of trying things, years of looking at other rigs, years of research, and then going out and putting those designs to the test to see what actually works and how this suspension responds. I've got a magic number. It's called anti-squat. I got a magic number that I kind of always shoot for when it comes to suspension, so that for our application of rock crawling that we do here in the Midwest, that I know that the suspension is going to react the way that we want it to, and the vehicle is going to be very stable and handle the way we want it to. That's kind of in a nutshell. It's all guesswork, really.
So talking about anti-squat, what is that?
Anti-squat is what the suspension does under a load or under acceleration or under braking. For braking, it's called anti-dive on the front end, but we'll just kind of stick with the rear end. So basically, you've got a number. 100% anti-squat would be the suspension. When you step on the throttle, the suspension, in theory, does nothing. It just stays perfectly still. And for different applications, you want that anti-squat number to be higher or lower. And for us, for rock crawling, we want that number to be a little bit lower than 100%, because when we step on the throttle, we want to gain a little bit of traction. We want those tires to kind of dig into the rocks and give us that little bit more traction that we need to maybe get up a ledge or whatever it may be. So for my applications, I typically try to shoot for around 80 to 85% anti-squat, and that ensures that when I step on the throttle, that rear suspension is going to just squat a little bit, not a lot, but just enough to gain a little bit more traction, because if it's lifting, then I'm going to lose traction. And that's a great application for high-speed stuff. You want to be able to go through the whoops real fast, but for us, we like that number to be around 85%, and the suspension will handle real well. Obviously, there's way more than anti-squat that goes into suspension. You got to make sure things don't bind up. You got to make sure your joints have plenty of room to do the swings that they need to do, and your struts or coilovers or springs or whatever don't bind up anywhere and all that good stuff. But anti-squat's an important number when it comes to suspension for sure.
So how do you adjust your anti-squat or anti-dive in your suspension? How do you design it to change
most of that
squat?
Adjustment comes in the separation of your control arms at either end. So you want more separation at the axle end and less separation at the frame end, and that's designed to get those, if you drew an imaginary line with both of these until they intersected, and wherever that intersects, whether it be way up here or way back here, is going to change whether or not you got a high anti-squat or a low anti-squat. And so, general rule of thumb is you have about 10 inches of separation at the axle. The less separation you have at the frame side, the better. And then another kind of rule of thumb is your upper control arms need to be about 75% of your lower control arms. Again, reality is always going to trump those numbers.
Here we go.
You can't always get a perfect situation unless, again, you're building your suspension and then designing the chassis around that. So, but those are just kind of general rules of thumb to get you where you want to be. Highly recommend, if you're going to build a suspension, Google it. They're free. Get you a 4-link calculator. Play with some numbers. Just enter crazy numbers and see what the changes are. And it's kind of fun.
Yeah, so like a perfect suspension might, on the calculator, would make this upper control arm mount way up here, but you can't do that. You have to mount it, so then you have to work with the frame that you have.
Yep.
That goes back to what you were saying earlier. You could design a suspension and then build the rest of the car around it. But when you're building the frame that's already like what you got, we're building a TJ, so we have a TJ frame. You have to work with what you got and get it as close as you can to that perfect setup.
Yep.
Gotcha. And another thing I appreciate that I noticed you doing when you were building this is you've got both axles at full compression.
Yep, yeah.
Well, this one's
full
flexed out a
stuff.
little bit.
Yeah, I flexed this one out.
I noticed, I was like, why does he have this bucket turned down? Shouldn't he make it straight with a control arm? Well, this is as high as this control arm will ever go. So he tilts it, you tilted it down, that way you've got all that down travel.
Yeah, that way it's bound up. It's as bound as it'll get at full stuff, and it's got all that swing to drop the, we're running 14-inch struts on this, so we'll run about 4 inches of shaft, so we'll have 4 inches up travel, the rest will be down, so I need as much down travel as I can without anything binding up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, why are the buckets crooked? And then okay, I get it now.
So we're running the Moto-Built back half kit on this LJ. Probably really don't need a cross member between the two, but just to help with any kind of deflection that these might cause, this cross member will just give those frame rails that much more support and keep them from wanting to deflect. We used to run a cross bar between here and here, and that works really well, but it takes up a lot of space inside, and it kind of forces you we'll box the whole body in so it's fully enclosed, so he can put a hard top on it and not have to worry about the elements getting in. Well, that kind of ties the body and the frame together, and over time it just creates squeaks and creaks and makes all kinds of noises, and it's just kind of irritating, if you will. So instead of doing that, we found that doing a cross member similar to this really will add enough strength to keep those from ever wanting to deflect. And again, with the Moto-Built, it's all 1/4 inch, fully boxed in. I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere, but just for that little extra insurance. Plus, I wanted somewhere to put my logo. And I know it's upside down, but if you get underneath it, it's not upside down. You'll never see it from the top side again. Oh yeah, watch those lifts. They'll get you every time. So yeah, a little bit of fun there too.
So talk to me about these cross members you got here.
Yes.
You needed a space to mount your control arms.
Correct.
What are they made from? How'd you come up with this design?
Each cross member's made of 3 pieces, main pieces essentially. It's 1/4 inch material. Unfortunately here at Off-Road Addiction, we don't quite have the technology to bend anything this tight without, because these are pretty long here, without kind of messing it up. So it was easier for me to build it out of 3 pieces. But it's fully boxed in and fully welded. The cross member itself is never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of people
stout
make mention to me about the fact that they hang down a little bit low, and they do. The customer really did not want to have to cut the tub up, so we sacrificed a little bit of ground clearance, but don't fear, it will have a full belly. So though it will hang a little bit lower, the belly will still be smooth as we can get it, and that way he can land on the belly all he wants and not have to worry about tearing anything up. They're not going to hang him up on rocks or anything like that. It'll be fully covered underneath here from here all the way up to the oil pan, so that he's got the most protection possible. We're going to wind up a little bit taller than I typically would build one, just to gain a little bit of ground clearance there. But it'll still be, pretty low stance for being on 42s and 14-inch struts. So, they're all there. There's no doubt about that.
So what's next? What are you planning next for this thing?
So next steps are, we've got Moto-Built fenders that are supposed to be here any second. The truck will probably pull in while we're filming this. Once I get the Moto-Built fenders on it, then I can lower the body back. Well, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna lower it down. I'm not that tall. I can get the body set down and kind of figure out what kind of clearances I have, and then I'm gonna start working on front strut brackets for the frame side and axle side. Once I have those on, it's the chassis will be ready for weld out, and then from there we'll start working on wiring, plumbing, getting all those little detail things figured out, getting the body boxed back in where I cut it out for the strut towers, getting some corner armor made, because we're stretch this back about 6 inches overall on the wheelbase on the rear. From there, once we kind of have everything mocked together, everything that we need to, every hole we need to drill in the frame, every bracket we need to attach, we'll blow it back apart, send everything off to powder, and then put it back together for the final time.
Is this going to get aluminum lowers?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Everything here at Off-Road Addiction, you don't get a choice. You're getting aluminum lowers, whether you like it or not. These are just mock-ups. The aluminum is just a proven control arm material that we just beat on relentlessly, so I don't even give you an option.
Yeah, I know another hiccup that we have is exhaust.
Yeah, so I do have, though this is a fun idea, this isn't going to be the final exhaust setup. I've got some manifolds coming that we're hopeful that we can get to kind of tuck down in tight here, and then run down and just in front of the oil pan there, keep it tucked up above that skid plate that I'll be building, and then run everything out the passenger side because we do have a drive shaft to put in over here still. So
yeah, there's no room here.
It is
for
very,
exhaust.
very tight in here. But if we can make it all work, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I knocked the body mount off, but I think it'll be okay. And no, that's not the final cut.
I was gonna say it's
well.
got two circles.
I cut it just enough for the tire to clear. It'll get a nice smooth radius there and look real clean with the corner armor on it and all that good stuff. So
Yeah. So what are you gonna make the quarter armor out of?
it'll be out of 1/8" steel. While aluminum is good, the steel is plenty strong, and if the customer ever wants to add like tube work to it, to add like a little fender flare or something, it'll make it easier to do there.
Yeah.
So
Because the rear axle's pushed back
yeah, about 6 inches.
from factory.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just gonna, is it gonna have a rear arch too, or is it just gonna get cut straight back, or like is it?
Oh yeah, no, it'll be a full wheel well.
Oh,
Everything
okay.
everything will just be, I'd say, moved back. With the 42, it takes up a lot of this wheel well as it is. So
Gotcha.
ideally it'll be wind up back here somewhere, and come up to about this factory cut, and ideally match that radius all the way around. That way the tire fits in there nice and snug, and then like I said, we'll box the tub all back in so that none of this is exposed here. Make some access ports for the bolts in case you ever need to take the struts out or whatever. But
Yeah, I see Project R&D's put back together.
Project R&D is the body is back together. I'm working on some maintenance stuff now. It hasn't been touched or driven since the rollover. Just been so busy and hadn't had time. But I promised Brooke I would get it back together, so it'll be ready for her to go beat on again.
You're such a good husband.
I try. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy these videos. I hope you enjoy this technical stuff and the fab stuff. Let us know if you'd like something different. Otherwise, make sure to like, subscribe, share. We'll see you next week. Hit the notification bell.